Today we're going to be talking about cambered turns and not leaning on the bars. Having good body posture as it relates to those cambered turns, especially when you're out in the wild. If you haven't watched the previous videos, I would encourage you to do so. I've got a playlist down here. I explain in more detail why it's important not to lean on the handlebars, why our weight needs to be in proper body position with our feet on the pegs. Here, as we get out into a small cambered hill section, it's going to become even more apparent. Now, today's drills are going to start kind of easy and then get pretty hard. This is something that I thought I could do, a one-handed turn out on a small camber, but as it turns out, this is much more challenging than I thought. So even if you are an established rider, I would encourage you to give this a shot. This is a part of Ray Peters' mindset as it relates to weighting the pegs and breaking that triangle where we have a good, strong foundation, but if we are to remove one hand, suddenly it becomes more apparent if we're not balanced on the bike or if our body posture is poor. So this is going to tie in together throttle control, balance, body position, turning, peg pressure, a whole lot of concepts. We're ramping up in this series as it relates to body posture, and this one is going to be the final as it relates to hillside cambered turns. Now, if your body posture is one where your legs are not strong and you're typically leaning forward over the bars, chicken pecking is one way to describe that. That is not the way we want to run trials. Typically, the rear end washes out in those hills, as you can see here. So we want to get our weight back on the pegs over that rear tire in order to complete this turn. One way to kind of reset the mind as it relates to our hips and our knees is to go ahead and practice this on a gentle hillside. So we're going to start out very simply just with 2 fingers on the left hand bar and then add a side handle on the bar end and then eventually going one-handed. Here we go. I would encourage you to find a spot that's fairly wide open. I do have some trees to turn around in here, but there's not a whole lot on the ground that's that scary. I know there's a lot of leaves down right now, but this is a fairly safe environment, at least for me, and we can turn figure eights or even just turn S turns as we're going up and then back down. Whatever you feel comfortable with, we are going to be starting there because this is going to build upon itself. We're going to be starting out with just 2 fingers on that left handlebar in order to try and get more comfortable with weighting the pegs rather than leaning on the bars, especially on that uphill. Now downhill, it's going to be important that our hips are back as well and that we're using that rear brake. Just 2 fingers on the bars. Downhill can certainly be a little bit more scary. Go ahead and use that rear brake to cover, apply good brake pressure, hips back. Now, if you don't normally experiment with your map settings, I would encourage you to go into the muddy map. Just makes that throttle a little bit more subtle, less jerky. Hips way back. This downhill right-hand turn was one of my hardest ones to get more comfortable with in order to lean the bike using good peg pressure. It just took a lot of time. So the goal of this is just going to be to experiment and kind of play around with your body posture and how it relates to these turns. This is something that I don't have boundaries out. I'm just trying to get a feel for how well I can turn. I think boundaries would actually make it more difficult because right now I'm just trying to rewire my brain into the proper body posture. Part of that just has to do with your comfortability with the throttle control and all the other variables. So we've done 2 fingers. Now we're going to go ahead and take our hand and put it on the outside edge of that bar end. Just putting it here allows us to use less weight on there or more weight. We can kind of cup with our hand in order to, push or lean as we need to. There will be some variables in the terrain, and so this one is going to be getting even a little bit more tricky. All right, it's time. The rubber's going to meet the road as we completely take off that left hand. Now, if you're not comfortable with this, I would encourage you to hold your hand close to the handlebar, just in case you got to grab that clutch. This is something that can be definitely a little scary. So instead of starting out in the woods, if you've got a grassy hillside or even just grass in general, can make it feel a little bit more comforting. This is something that I think is really important to incorporate early on in your training. I have been doing this for about a year now, just to give you a perspective of how far along I have come. I don't do it every day, I should, but it's something that I'm incorporating into the training to try and get more comfortable standing on the pegs and using my foot pegs and peg pressure to turn the motorcycle. Allowing the bike to lean is what's going to make it turn instead of forcing it with my hands. Brake, hips back on the downhill, knees in on the uphill. I think making that left-hand turn is definitely easier than the right-hand turn. Now, a couple tips to help this go a ways. I try and make sure my feet are standing on the outside of the peg. So instead of standing on the peg brackets, I'm standing on the pegs themselves. A little bit more weight on the balls of my feet as opposed to the arches definitely helps, but I still want to be able to hit that rear brake easily, especially going downhill with only one hand. That rear brake becomes very, very important. The bike's actually going to be able to lug a little lower than what you normally would do, especially with that clutch out. You can adjust the idle if need be, but I don't. Now, this type of thing doesn't necessarily look that difficult on video, but I would encourage you to go out and give this a try. Even if you're an experienced rider, it can become very enlightening as it relates to how your body posture is on the bike. If you guys are enjoying this type of thing, I would encourage you to hit that like button. That sends this out to more trials enthusiasts who like seeing trials information. I'm getting this from Ray Peters. Ray has been interviewed by me in a few different videos, and I've gone and trained with him. So if you want more content as it relates to Ray Peters, you can check out his Facebook page where he posts clinics that he's doing in the United States, and also come to Trials Training Days. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.